I never used alcohol markers before, but it's possible to learn anything with the right skills. And in this video, I'll try these Ohuhu markers to show you how I apply the 5 skills that I think that everyone should learn to master any art medium fast. So when you try a new art medium, you need to learn the techniques first and foremost, and doing research is important even for experienced artists. Ohuhu kindly sent me their alcohol markers, and I wanted to try them, but I had no clue about the techniques. And to get started quickly, that's what I would typically do, and what I did here actually. So first I asked myself what supplies I need, how to blend and layer that medium, what order to add colors, and if there are any special tools to help the process. For example, from just opening the box, I found a colorless blending pen and super convenient tools like the swatch cards and a sheet protector. And then I learned some things by watching a few YouTube videos. So in short, you don't need to do a ton of research, but a bit will help you get started. Then there's drawing, and drawing skills can be helpful, of course, to use any medium that you want to use, but you can also go with simple shapes to start. An awesome shortcut, however, is a coloring book because you can practice right away without overwhelming yourself with a sketch. And this one I have here, for instance, is really helpful because first, the pages are thick for markers and designs come in twice. So it feels like less of a risk to practice. I like to use coloring books to warm up, to get a feel for the medium I'm learning. And here what I did was to go for the tiger and the girl because for my art skill level, I felt it would be challenging enough. So think about other options out there that might be simpler for your own warm-up session, and there are really a bunch of options out there. Just make sure the paper is thick enough. Most times it will help with a lot of mediums. Now, what do you do in front of your sketch when you have zero experience with a medium? What I do is to focus on picking colors first. And normally I would tell you to stick to just a few of them, but as a newbie trying out markers, I appreciated that Ohuhu sent me their 216 Honolulu color set because I learned from researching that you can't really make a color lighter than what it is with alcohol markers. You have to play with the choices you have, and that's why it's better to have a gradient of the same kind of color when you paint realism like I do. And the swatch cards were really helpful in selecting colors, and this little warm-up session had me notice how alcohol markers are so simple. You really just need good thick paper and the markers themselves. Using this coloring page really helped me get the hang of them without feeling like I might be wasting my time. For example, in the beginning I was feeling hesitant because if you linger in one area for too long, the paper will absorb the color and the line will be thicker, at least with this paper. So I was a bit clumsy with all my strokes at first, but the colors blended so nicely and they didn't smudge, and that really gave me confidence to keep going. I was also able to get to the level of decently blending colors after a while in order to get nice gradients, and that was thanks to the little research I had done on YouTube. Basically, I learned that you should not be afraid and do a lot of layering and overlapping to smooth out harsh edges with alcohol markers. And I found it's okay to work an area again and again and again. It will blend better rather than messing everything up. And of course, it depends on the colors you use. That's why a gradient of the same shade seems to be so helpful with markers. And actually, I found that the blender Ohuhu has in the set is pretty convenient to add an invisible layer when I needed to and blend everything well at once without disturbing the base colors. But I also discovered a very, very light color will do the trick of blending the rest without altering the other much either. And I don't know if I would have dared applying so much marker on the paper and trying so many things if it was on a sketch that I had taken the time to draw. To make my art look harmonious with all the mediums, sometimes I like to use a color wheel, and it really helps me with looking at different color schemes. One of them being the complementary color scheme, and it's one of the most simple ones there is. For example here, our tiger is mostly orange. So what will be the complementary color to that? It's going to be the one at the opposite on the color wheel, and that's blue. I use this complementary scheme often because I can stick to just 2 main colors that I know will make my art pop and look harmonious, and it doesn't take that much time to decide. Another option I like is to use a color harmony book and just pick a scheme that I try to match with my medium. But if you're more experienced, you can also rely on past works and colors in your reference photos. I did that, for instance, to paint my final artwork with the Ohuhu markers, and I'll show it to you next. For success with your colors, try and not pass on swatches. They're really helpful, especially with this huge Ohuhu marker set. So make sure to fill them out or to make your own when you use another medium. Aside from color harmony, there's also color mixing, and you will learn color mixing through practice. You will see it helps with all the mediums. For example, I have great notions of color mixing through watercolor, but with these markers, frankly, I had no idea what to expect when it comes to layering, overlapping, and blending colors. At first, I even thought colors might dirty the nibs of other markers, and it's absolutely not the case, by the way, so that's kind of a fun thing that I discovered. So in the beginning, like I did with the tiger, I was super careful and I stuck to similar shades. And then I got a lot more bold with the colors. I wish you could see that. You could pick it up from a video. I'm not sure you can. Mostly with my way of adding them with the strokes. I was feeling confident at this point, and that's exactly what you want to do when you practice, when you warm up. I started daring to overlap my other colors on the skin, yellows, blues, and it really made a difference. I learned from warming up in the coloring page that colors do affect each other a bit when you overlap the alcohol markers, and it's actually easy to color mix with Ohuhu. And it might not be the case with other brands, I don't know about that, but here I was really happy because for realism, great gradients are essential, and you can see I managed to get something looking great color-wise, but also pretty smooth. I talked about overlapping, but deliberate layering is very important to succeed with a new art piece, and it's the case with the Ohuhu markers as well. The way I see it, some layering always matters, no matter your style. And as a general rule, the more layering, the more depth, the better contrast, and the more realism there will be. So first off, make sure that you have the proper paper and supplies to allow you and layer. In my case, with the coloring page and now this Strathmore paper designed for markers, I was able to overlap and layer my colors without limitation. The papers never suffered from it, and this helped leverage their blending ability very much too, while also getting the color harmony on point and the art to look like I wanted. This is the painting I attempted after my warm-up, and it's clear what layering can do here. First, it adds depth and realism. For instance, at first you can see this background didn't look too promising. But with layering and using the Ohuhu markers dual tip, notice how the background quickly improved. I was able to leverage the brush tip for normal strokes and the chisel tip for more texture in combination to layering colors. Same with the tree trunk. It looked really odd at first, but with layering and the great blendability, I really managed to pull it off, so it looks nice enough for a second try. With layering, you can also tie colors together. It really helps with color harmony. And I did that in the background when I added a little bit of yellow that I already had in the trunk. It made the background look more interesting, and it also tied it to the trunk since I didn't have blues anywhere else. Layering can also help you correct mistakes or just improve the art. And here I want to show you how I used it for a better contrast. To create great art, great contrast is as important as layering, if not even more important. Better contrast and great gradients make the art look really realistic. I'm not experienced with markers, and even when you know all the skills, at first you're going to make mistakes. But the good news is that you can fix them a lot of times. And I teach just that in my Patreon tutorials if you want to learn how to nail contrast, realism, and how to problem solve better, and I'll add a link to that in the description of my video. So here, for instance, with contrast on this piece, I didn't take care to leave the lighter areas light enough. And once they were covered up with markers, it was a bit too late. I should have had even lighter shades to work with, but I was not used to markers enough that I saw that. Because my set has such a large choice of colors, I solved the problem by adding contrast through darker colors. Also why you'll often hear not to go dark too fast with a lot of mediums. What I did was to make my not so light colors look lighter by contrasting them to dark grays. Using very dark colors is very useful in that, but also in creating a few details like the crevices I added here. You really get the impression there's a hollow area there. With all mediums, I also allow myself to use other things. anything to help me make the art as good as I want it to be. Not all mediums go well together, so you'll need to include that in your research. Here with the Ohuhu alcohol markers, I tried a fine liner and it works really well to emphasize small details the brush tip or chisel tip can get. I also used the white gel pen to create bright highlights later. I find that overall I did a pretty good job for a second try after warming up with my coloring page. And a power tip for you is to focus on one medium, master that one with all the skills I mentioned, and you'll see it becomes easier to switch later. These alcohol markers can be a place to start, especially for beginners, since they won't need many supplies to work with them. They're very low maintenance and they're affordable, and they go well with the type of coloring book I use, so it's a good way to practice. I added a link to them in the description of this video, and I want to thank you, Ohuhu, for sending them over because now I can actually use them. For more ideas about practicing from coloring books, there's this video right here. Thank you for watching and see you next time.